I'm David Tao, and welcome again to the Theories of Everything program on Channel. Viewers, this is the third program in our new series, Theories of Existence, the Big Questions. In our first program, we examined the hierarchy of big questions. These theories come in a sort of hierarchical form. First of all, you can consider theories of the universe, which are how the universe started, how it ends, how it evolves, and the shape of the universe, perhaps, the nature of space-time. That's at the bottom level. Going up a cog, we look at the theories of matter and forces that shape everything around us, and us included, that shape all atoms and molecules, the components, the quarks, the electrons, the neutrinos. And the latest theories that go beneath that towards theories of information and theories of space-time in general. These are often called the theories of everything, those that relate specifically to matter and forces. However, we can see that, as mentioned in our first program, that those theories constitute just a small fraction of the theory of everything, if it does exist in fact. So beyond space-time, beyond matter and forces, the next big questions that we'll be examining in this series are theories of life. How did life start? How was it created? Is it generic throughout the universe? How does life evolve? How do we expect the future of life to pan out? All aspects of how life formed and how it's likely to end. The next step in the hierarchy, if you like, is theories of mind. How we interpret reality. What is the nature of consciousness? How did it begin? What will happen when we perhaps form a global mind, when minds come together, as they're starting to do through the internet? So from space-time theories to matter theories, to life theories, to mind theories, and then theories of civilization we'll be examining in this series. How civilizations began, why they end, the nature of social structures. And of course the big questions of, are we heading for a utopia or an Armageddon? Are we likely to eliminate wars and poverty in the future, or will they just become endemic and engulf us? And will that be the end of civilization? And the final level of the hierarchy are theories of metaphysics, if you like, beyond current physics, beyond current matter and space-time. They're theories of the meaning of life, purpose of life, whether there's a God or not, and do we have free will? All those existential type theories that most of the major philosophers have developed and worked on over time. So that was in our first program. We examined the sort of range and scope and hierarchy of these theories of existence. In our second program, we took the bit between our teeth, and we took on one of the hard questions: are we currently living in a simulation? Are we the plaything of some other entity, or the creation of some other entity? And this might seem a fairly abstruse and sort of flimsy theory to be examining, but it's come into prominence lately, not only with films such as The Matrix, but with, again, our greater understanding of how science is evolving. Because as we looked at this question, we uncovered a lot of other aspects of that hierarchy. We had to delve into the nature of space-time. We had to delve into the future of life. Because humans, as we found in that program, in that second program, are already creating their own artificial realities, their own simulations, in the form of games and movies and scientific simulations. And being able to create virtual humans and virtual realities. And we're not doing too badly after 10,000 years, viewers, because we're now employing sophisticated graphics and mathematical algorithms to model all the artifacts and all the natural processes around us. Clouds, trees, nature, objects, and at the same time, and animals and humans as well. But before we simulate those to any depth, we not only need good visual effects, good outside effects of these objects, but good internal effect, good internal knowledge. knowledge of their cognitive states and behavioural states and how they react in their environment and why they react. But all that is coming together, and this is only the 21st century. So that was our first big question, if you like. Now, the answer, by the way, for those who missed that program, was that quite possibly we are in a simulation. We are living in a simulation because beings or entities in the far future, one reason is they will want to continue living in a universe, or surviving. Survival's the greatest incentive for doing anything, in fact. Understanding. Greater understanding, greater knowledge leads to greater odds of survival. In the far future, this universe will end. If life is still around in some form, what will they do? Well, they'll either create another universe and create another us, or both. Another universe in which forms life such as us can evolve afresh. So we're going to extend this topic in today's, trajectory in today's program. We're going to look at the future of life in our third program. Now viewers, it may seem rather presumptuous or hubristic to examine the question of the future of life at all. But on the other hand, what's the alternative? Do we not think about our future, the far future? Are we locked constantly in the near present? Are we constantly just looking a few years ahead, or perhaps at the most a few decades or a century ahead? Because again, the future guides our present. Our lives, if you like, as all past philosophers knew, create themselves from the future. We are constantly in the mode of planning. We're planning our careers, we're planning our work, we're planning our families, we're planning for the future. And that guides our present. So why not look a long, long way ahead and see if we can come up with something? And it may seem not only hubristic, but extremely difficult to do. But in fact, we've got some very powerful tools that will help us achieve this. And by the way, many scientists, many philosophers are working constantly in this area. There's a number of books that have hit the market recently, and they all look at the future of life. Biological life. We'll be going a little further. We'll be looking at the life forms that may have created us in a simulation, or have the potential to anyway. So we'll be going a long way ahead. But I think that's exciting, and again we have some guidance. First of all, we have 15 billion years of guidance since this universe came into existence. About 4.5 billion years since this Earth came into existence, and there's massive evidence and massive proof that this is now the case. Certainly 500 million years since animals came into existence in very small forms, and early humans split from primates probably around 6 million years ago, and we in our present form, or largely our present form, have been around for about 150,000 years, modern Homo sapiens. And if you look through that trajectory, you will find that overall, despite the dead ends, discontinuities, there's been an overall increase in complexity over time. So we have a couple of major evolutionary guidelines here. One is there appears to be an increase in complexity of form and function over time. We, for example, are a lot more complex than bacteria. Horses, dogs, cats are a lot more complex than bacteria. We have much more complex capacities to make decisions and think and build cities and build civilizations than dogs and cats. And we do well when compared with primates, our nearest relatives. So looking at that, we see there seems to be an ongoing trajectory. And in fact there is, because there's now a crucial theory in this whole projection of our future relates to the theories, competing theories of convergence and contingency. Convergence or contingency says that we're here as a result of a number of gigantic flukes. It was just lucky that the first cells formed. It was lucky that the first animals were created. It was just lucky evolved. It was just lucky that those animals in water emerged onto land. Those early land animals evolved into lizards and dinosaurs and the smallest mammals. And it was just lucky that those mammals evolved into early primates, and then lucky that those early primates evolved into more sophisticated species such as chimpanzees, and then just luck that they evolved into humans or various hominids of different sorts. Well, there's an awful lot of luck in that. And if the tape of life had been rerun, that theory says you'd have some completely different outcome. You might still just have fish, if you're lucky. Or you might have little worms roaming around, or you might have got to lizards. But basically, every time, if you reran the tape of life, we would have ended up with something radically different. In fact, the tape of life has been rerun a number of times after major catastrophes. And each time, species that were around have largely come back again, have largely returned after those mass extinctions that occurred 250 million years ago, for example, a major one around 500 million years ago. Perhaps different types, but broadly the same, similar types. In other words, in each case, there were similarities, major similarities. And the theory of convergence, which is the major advocate, is the scientist Simon Conway Norris. The late Stephen Jay Gould was the main proponent of the contingency theory, the luck theory. The convergence theory, though, is gaining ground because of the massive evidence around, not only recurrence of life forms after extinctions, but let's take vision, for example. Vision has been split into two basic forms, insect vision and mammal vision. And it's evolved in each case a number of times, independently. It's come back. So we have, for example, insects have this multiple lenses compound eye form. And that's returned at least twice in arthropods, for example, in spiders. It's recurred independently. As far as the vertebrate type camera eye, the binocular vision, that's evolved independently at least 7 times with different species. In other words, there's been a convergence towards a form of vision, which is pretty essential for survival, that ended up being roughly the same, these two categories, one or the other. They didn't just sort of happen by chance, they evolved, but they evolved independently depending on the situation, and they always came back to a similar form. Language, our own language, of course, probably has a number of features, including syntactic rules, underlying patterns. But those patterns are also there in the form of bird calls and mammal and other mammal forms of communication as well. Chimpanzees, in fact, in their alarm calls, have a similar sort of underlying syntax. So language and communication. Communication occurred twice independently in the form of, with two different fishes that communicate and navigate by electrical signals. Similar form of communication for underwater. They both evolved, that form of communication evolved independently at least twice, probably several times. But the rules of language evolved in many species, and they're not that different, even though ours are more complex, and our language more complex because of our vocal tract development and our neural development as well. There are still commonalities, and they emerged independently. A number of species independently started to use tools, chimpanzees, as we know, but also dolphins. Also birds. The crow has been found to be able to twist wire and use it as a hook and dig food out with it and so forth. Birds and chimpanzees and dolphins independently decided to use tools because it progressed their ability to survive in their environment. And also social structures have evolved independently but converged also. Chimpanzee social structures and dolphin social structures are very similar in the way they form and reform groups. So there's and also in the form of their ability, there's been a convergence in their ability to acquire abstract thought, because chimpanzees and parrots, for example, and dolphins can recognise themselves. They're the only three, apart from humans, only three species that can recognise, have the capacity for self-recognition in mirrors. By looking at their image in mirrors, they recognise that that's them. Their image in the mirror is them. So overall, we see that this convergent process has been a driving process, and it means in the long term that minds and intelligence has evolved, as Simon Conway Morris says in his latest book. The intelligence is an inevitable outcome of life, and that means the ability to adapt. That's driven by the need to adapt to one's environment, to survive, to constantly learn and acquire knowledge. And it means that life forms, wherever they occur in the universe, probably will be fairly similar, because the forces are the same throughout the universe, the matter building blocks, the force building blocks. There are different structures, different levels of gravity, for example. One may not expect perhaps life to evolve in a black hole, but it may well evolve on other planets similar to Earth, because again the structures are out there, the building blocks of life are there, water, carbohydrates, hydrocarbons, quite complex molecules are floating around in the universe. So there's a very good chance that if life has evolved in other parts of the universe, it will evolve broadly along similar lines to ourselves. There may be some exceptions to that. There may be colonies, for example, of insects could become smarter. Their combined intelligence is equivalent to mammal intelligence, and if they suddenly got a boost, perhaps more oxygen in the environment that enlarged their brains, perhaps they could become a super intelligent species too. But broadly, if I ran into an alien tomorrow, I'd expect an advanced alien civilization to look a little bit like myself. Convergence, rather than contingency, is the first evolutionary building block that gives us some insight into the future of life. The fact that intelligence is an inevitable outcome, eventually, of life forms, provided they survive from meteor impacts and so forth. The second major theory or group of theories which gives us insight is the fact that evolution creates continuing complexity due to the acquisition of more information. Again, we've seen from early cells, early bacteria to us today, there's been an increase in our capacity to absorb information, larger brains, more complex nervous systems, form and function, the ability to grasp, etc., in much more sophisticated, fine ways, finely tuned ways, so that this process of increasing complexity, not only of us biologically but of our civilization, will not stop. There's a constant feedback going on, a positive feedback loop that drives us on, that ratchets us up. As we develop a more complex environment, we seek to exceed that. We seek to go to the next stage. That's the driving force, because we see that if we do that, we perhaps might have a better quality of life. Of course it doesn't always happen, but in general terms, we have a much better quality of life, or certainly at the moment in the West, than people did 200 years ago, and certainly 1,000 years ago, let's say before anaesthetic, before sophisticated, before clean water, or relatively clean water, before the ability to eat reasonable food, and so forth. So we're constantly pushing the envelope, if you like. And in the process, we continue to develop more sophisticated techniques that we hope and expect will improve the quality of our life. So one of the major outcomes, of course, is computers recently, in the last 50 years. And our knowledge keeps doubling, and it's doubling in the last 50 years. There's more knowledge being acquired generally about our environment, about us, than in the previous, since humans first walked the earth. And this speed up is increasing, because each new bit of knowledge catalyses every other piece of knowledge, and it's likely that this doubling rate of knowledge will occur now every 10, at least every 20 years into the far future. So the amount of knowledge will increase exponentially, as will, and already has, and as will our ability to survive and the complexity of us and our environment. Our complexity is being increased through the use of computers, through the use of now the internet, and through the use of artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence adds to our ability to solve problems. No scientist works without using some techniques of artificial intelligence, whether it's statistical mathematical techniques or straight neural network techniques for pattern recognition, or evolutionary algorithms that help us solve difficult problems that are impossible to solve using standard mathematics. Artificial intelligence and computers, which will be on our wrist tomorrow and already are in some cases, and basic neural implants and connections anywhere, anytime to the internet will be with us within the next 20 years. 500 million people have access to the internet now. In the future, in the far future, well, in the near future, I'm sorry, everyone will have access, because as the cost of the internet access goes down and down. So in other words, we become a global organism, we become a vastly more intelligent species because of our ability to invent artificial intelligence and reapply it back and combine it with our normal biological intelligence. The ability to combine with billions of others on the planet and share their knowledge, as scientists do now when they cooperate on major space projects or global warming projects, human genome projects, will increase. That is not conjecture, that is something that's happening, and you can watch it as it proceeds. From any news bulletins, from any technical bulletins, science bulletins, whatever, you can watch this growth of knowledge proceeding at pace, and already there are forms of artificial life. I've mentioned them on several programs previously. Clever robots, clever agents that are software, basically formed from software, and roll out and assist us to utilise the resources of the internet, which, by the way, will cover all our global knowledge sources in the very near future. So artificial life, if you like, will combine again through the medium of the internet, which will be a wireless internet as well as a wired internet, will combine with biological life in the next phase of the future of life, and it will emerge from the most significant threshold to date in our civilization. It will emerge in a combined symbiotic form. One could call it meta-life. So viewers, the emergence of meta-life is almost on us. We use these artificial intelligent tools. We combine with others on the internet to share our knowledge and gain extra knowledge. The level of our civilization is increasing in complexity, and meta-life will colonise the whole galaxy eventually, and certainly the universe in the far future. But that also, the colonisation will occur at an exponential rate. We're already starting to colonise our own solar system, sending probes to Mars, followed by human expeditions, and then beyond to the next stars. That will involve control over all energy sources, because the amount of energy required to do this will be massive. So eventually, within 100 years, we'll be tapping directly into the fusion power of the sun, eventually into the fusion power of suns in a galaxy, which will be more than enough to create new universes, and eventually into black holes, the ultimate power source. So the amount of energy will be massive, and the amount of information will tend towards the infinite. So our meta-life of the future, and we might call it Omega, because Omega is becoming quite a common term by a number of writers to signify this far future life form. Omega will spread through the universe. Convergence will continue, because it will have the capacity for hyper-intelligence to be able to almost instantly solve problems because of the matter, the energy and the knowledge at its disposal, and to create its own virtual realities. And eventually this metaform, or meta-life, or Omega, will become more abstract. Again, we've shown the close linkage between, and we'll talk about it in the future again, between matter and information. There's an abstraction process already occurring with us. We talk in very abstract terms. We talk in terms of processes and patterns and outcomes. and so forth. Our language is becoming more abstract. We're not just talking about things, we're talking about systems, processes, etc. And in the future, this will become more and more abstract, so that life will transform into a more abstract form, if you like, of information and energy, capable of taking on any form, capable of transforming itself into any environment, into any reality. Again, if we extrapolate a little bit, and again the move is exponential, we see that this form of life will probably emerge again at an exponential rate, that knowledge is increasing, probably within a few thousand years. But it won't stop there, because the omegas, the early omegas, will continuously bootstrap their potential on and on to the next phase in an unlimited way. So at the end of time, at the end of this universe, we'll have an infinitely knowledgeable omega, and possibly an infinitely wise one as well. We'll discuss the emergence, the evolution of ethics and morals out of feedback from trial and error in the future, rather than just acquired knowledge from wise books. Wisdom is an outcome of knowledge. But just as, viewers, if you put your ear to a railway track, you can pick up the vibrations, you can hear the train coming from some distance away. Ever since trains and railway lines were invented, people have been doing that. If you pause for a moment and look at the world as a society as it is evolving, you will feel the vibrations of this future of life, because you're already living it. We're already progressing and passing through into this magnificent future, this optimistic future, which we have the ability now, because we can understand it better, to control and make even better. I'm David Tao, and you've been watching the Theories of Everything program. I'll look forward to seeing you again next week.